the objective of today's presentation is to help you understand how to write a close analysis of a poem. Now, a close analysis of a poem is also called a critical analysis of a poem. Now, one primary understanding that you should have when you start thinking of writing a close analysis of a poem is this, that basically you are engaging with the text through an active reading. You are talking with the text. So you read, and then read it. Read for what? Read to find out the literary elements in that particular text that you are reading. In this case, the poem. Look for the rhyme, for example. Look for the kind of meter. Look for the kind of form. Is it elegy? Is it lyric? Is it ode? Or is it a free poem or free verse? Now, one very important thing is that you should not just identify these literary elements in a poem. Rather, you should also describe the effects that they make. Do they produce music? Do they create a certain feeling? Do they invoke a certain emotion? Do they create the emotion of happiness, pleasure, sadness, tragedy, boredom, nostalgia, patriotism, love, hate? Look for the kind of feelings that piece of literature invokes. Or does the poem invoke any of the human characteristics like determinism, passion, motivation, so on and so forth? So analyze the effects. Describe what effects a particular poem or that particular poem is producing. The examples I have given, they are of course very limited. You need to think of other possibilities as well. So after you talk with the poem, you need to think aloud. Probably it is not possible for you to really think aloud in the sense of speaking aloud, describing what the poem means, but there are two ways to think aloud. One is that you read the poem with a partner, 2 students or 3 students or 4 together, read one single poem and then discuss that. That is one way to think aloud. The other way to think aloud is that while you read a poem, write down your observations. Which observations? Let's have a look. Pose questions about something that confuses you or about possible interpretation. Identify unfamiliar vocabulary or allusions that have been made in the poem. By allusions, we mean what is that a particular part of the poem or a particular word in a poem is referring to. For example, as some of you said, that the road in the poem that you people study by Houseman, the road refers to the life, which leads us to ultimate death. What does that mean? That means the road alludes to, or the road is an illusion of death, or maybe road is an illusion of life. That depends how you interpret it, but that is what we mean by an illusion. And then note specific stylistic elements and their effect. You students have done an activity of the kind by which I'm sure at this stage you can make sense of what do we mean by stylistic elements in a poem, and then what effect they produce. Rephrase inverted lines. Sometimes for poetic effect, poets use a sentence which is inverted in its structure, though it means something very normal. If that is the case, you need to rephrase such lines which are inverted. Finally, make connections within the poem, noting any repetitions, patterns, or contrasts or repetitions. Now, what are these strategies to write the close analysis of a poem? The strategy that we are going to learn is called annotation. There are other strategies as well. Another strategy which is referred to in the same reading which I have shared with you, it is called visual organization or graphic organization. We are not doing that. That looks too mechanical. I would prefer this one, annotation. Both work the same way. Both lead you to the same results. So the strategy, students, you are going to use to write your close analysis is called annotation. What does it mean? The annotation strategy has 3 steps. The first step is called reading 1 or first reading. The second step is called reading 2. The third step is called reading 3. So what is reading 1 step of this strategy? You read the poem to understand, just to understand what the words mean. For example, in the poem that you have read by Houseman, the word stiller, S-T-I-L-L-E-R, was, I'm sure, new for some of you. Some of you might not have very quickly understood what the word meant, which is very normal, which is very natural. Because one, you are reading literature of a foreign language. Two, you are reading literature, and literature is meant to use the vocabulary which is uncommon. So it is very natural for you to find quite a number of words in a poem which are totally new for you. So what you should do at reading 1 level, you should look up their meanings wherever you want to, in a dictionary, online, wherever. So at this stage, you are understanding the text. Now, here is an additional instruction. You must record or annotate, that is the right word. Annotate the poem. Write down in the margins what do all words mean which are new for you. Write the definitions, write the hints, write the meanings. After you have done that, the first step is done. Second step, connect with broader themes or ideas in the poem. What is the bigger theme of the poem? Is it about death? Is it about competition? Is it about natural beauty? Is it about loyalty? Is it about friendship? What is the poem about? What is the broader theme of the poem? Sometimes a poem has many ideas in it. So what are those ideas the poem is referring to? Maybe each stanza has a different idea. Now this is reading 2 level, the second step. Again, do not assume you know the broader themes or you know the bigger ideas. Rather, annotate them, write them down in the margins of the poem. Reading 3. This is the third step. On the third step, you should write your observations as sentences. Some people call it paraphrasing. You have to make sure that you actually understood the poem. If you just read it and you feel you understood it, probably you are a little vague about your understanding. The only way to authenticate that you understood the poem is to write down your understanding that you just got. So if a poem has 10 lines in it, you should be able to write your observations in 10 lines. So although it sounds a little mechanical, but still one line for one line, at least one line for one line should be written to describe your understanding of the poem. After you have done all these three steps, after you have written or recorded the output of each of these, after you have recorded your understanding of each of these steps, now you are all set to write your close reading analysis. But these are the three steps for close reading itself. Let's move on to an example. Students, now look at it. The first step of annotation. This is a sonnet which is called Sonnet 29, written by Shakespeare. Now, in the first step, you might notice over here, the reader has noted either the meanings of the words or what those words might mean in this context. In some cases, the reader has also observed if there is any personification used. Let's have a look through the poem. Just a few lines. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like hold on please, here, sorry. Wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed. Okay, let's stop here. Now, students, you might notice the word bootless, for example, the reader has highlighted it and written in the margin, look up. That means the reader doesn't know the meaning of the word bootless. Deaf heaven, the reader knew that this is a personification. Therefore, he wrote it or she wrote it as more personification. If you are the reader and you have not identified this to be a personification, that is absolutely fine. Probably in the second reading, you should be able to pick it up as a personification. Look at the word art over here. Now in Shakespeare, the word art means A-R-E, R. But the word art has that mean also, which we are already aware of. Okay, artistic. So that means the word art has multiple meanings. Now, see, this reader has his own or her own annotations, which you can see on the screen. You will have your own different annotations depending upon the kind of poem that you are reading. But this is just one example how the first reading should look like. This reading, the first reading, is the first step of annotation. What is annotation? A strategy to write your close reading analysis. All right, let me move on to the second reading, which is the second step of the annotation strategy of writing your analysis. Now you might notice over here all these dimmed annotations, they are from first reading, but all those are sharper and darker They are from the second reading. You should do the same thing. In the first reading, use a pen of one color, and in the second reading, use a pen of a different color. Just to make it clear for yourself, what did you write first and what did you write later. Now, in the second annotation, you might notice, for example, an annotation right at the bottom, juxtaposing heaven and earth, earthly things not as important as love. So did you notice over here that now the reader is broadening his or her observations about the poem? Now the reader is coming up with some theme, with some ideas, the ideas and the themes which the reader is able to understand out of the poem. That is what you should also do. Are there any comparisons or contrasts? Write them down in the margins of the poem. Let me move on to the third step, reading 3. Now, this paragraph written over here, students, is a paraphrase of the sonnet. Some people call it exploratory writing. Why? Because this kind of paragraph helps you to clarify for yourself the meanings, the ideas, the themes in the poem, which you could not get in the first reading or in the second reading. Now, just read a few lines with me and you will get to know how this kind of writing is just experimental. The first 3 lines over here, allow me to read aloud. In this Shakespearean sonnet, the speaker seems miserable at first. He's crying about being an outcast. I'm not sure about those bootless cries. Students, did you notice that the reader is so honest? Because this is the form of writing which is for the sake of understanding the poem. But the reader has recorded this observation in the step 3. I'm not sure about these bootless cries. And then he continues, the reader continues, he says he is jealous of people who have it better than he has it. He envies people with hope, with talent, with friends, and with scope. Not sure what that means, but maybe more open-minded, question mark, and then period. So this is the way you might notice a very simple, easy flowing language. That is what you should have in your own paraphrase at the reading 3 level or in your exploratory writing. After you have done these 3 steps in relation with the poem, now students, you are ready to write down your analysis. So when you write down your analysis, these are the 4 things you should keep in mind. 1, develop a thesis statement. You cannot just write everything about a poem. You need to have one main notion about the poem on which you want to focus on. Do you want to focus on the structure of the poem? Do you want to focus on theme of the poem? Any one particular theme of the poem? Or more than one themes of the poem? Do you want to write about the style of the poem? But you need to have a thesis statement about that. Then the second thing, organize. You need to organize your analysis into paragraphs. Do not write one long paragraph in your analysis. And arrange your paragraphs in a particular order. Maybe if you are going to write your analysis about the themes in the poem, somebody asks you, okay, write about the themes of this poem, then you can have one paragraph for each theme. And you can plan, well, if 500 words is the length, you can plan maybe 3 paragraphs. Each paragraph for one theme of the poem, the top paragraph introduction, the last paragraph conclusion. And then integrate quotations. Try to use quotations from the text as well. Not too many of them. But please remember The quotation should not be for the sake of embellishment and decoration. Rather, they should be for the sake of enhancing the meaning of what you are saying. Finally, document the sources. Sometimes, if you use a dictionary to look up for a certain definition of a word and you are using that definition in your analysis, then you must cite that source as well. It is called documenting your sources. For that, you can either use MLA or APA, but please be consistent in whatever style you use. And this is the end of the presentation.